My sister announced at Christmas dinner that my husband was the father of her 2-year-old daughter, and she waved a DNA test and a stolen comb as proof. I looked at the comb, looked at my husband, and laughed so hard I couldn't breathe. My sister had a gift for making everything about her, especially when it should have been about me. My high school graduation turned into her pregnancy announcement before I even got my diploma. My engagement party got cancelled because of her emergency. My parents left my wedding reception early because she went into labor. Every single milestone I ever had got swallowed whole by her chaos, and my parents always thanked me afterward for being so understanding. I stopped talking to my family 2 years ago and built a quiet life with my husband. No drama, no emergencies, no one demanding I sacrifice my happiness for hers. Then my mom started calling, begging me to come to Christmas, swearing my sister had changed and wasn't the same person anymore. I said no a dozen times, but my husband thought I should give it one last chance and I loved him enough to try. So we showed up on Christmas Eve with low expectations, and for a few hours, everything felt almost normal. My sister hugged me at the door like nothing had ever happened between us. Then dinner started and my sister got strange. She kept finding music, excuses to touch my husband's arm and laugh at things he didn't say. She brought up a conversation they supposedly had at some barbecue last summer, except my husband wasn't at that barbecue because we weren't speaking to my family back then. She kept positioning her youngest daughter near him and tilting her head like she was studying them together. "She has your eyes, don't you think?" she said at one point, and my husband just stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Her actual husband was sitting right there, not reacting at all, just shoveling food into his mouth like this was normal. Then, between the ham and the pie, my sister stood up and clinked at her glass. The table went quiet. She pulled out a folded piece of paper and a comb, took a deep breath, and announced that my husband had been sleeping with her for years, that he was the real father of her youngest daughter, that she had proof because she stole his comb from our bathroom, and the DNA test came back positive. She held up the results like a trophy. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father wouldn't look at anyone. My sister's husband stopped chewing and just stared at her with his blank expression like his brain was trying to catch up. And my sister stood there glowing, looking right at me with this satisfied little smile. "I've been waiting 2 years to tell you," she said. "You thought cutting us off would protect you? Merry Christmas." My husband squinted at the comb in her hand, a black handle with a kind of vintage look to it. "That's not mine," he said slowly. "I don't even use a comb. That's Craig's." Every head at the table turned to the far end where my husband's cousin Craig was slumped in his chair with bloodshot eyes and a plate he'd refilled 3 times. Craig got invited to every family gathering because he was technically family, but mostly he just showed up stoned, ate everything in sight, and passed out on the nearest couch before anyone cut the pie. He looked a lot like my husband if you didn't examine them side by side. Same dark hair, same jawline, same general build. The difference was my husband was a project manager who wore pressed shirts and Craig sold homemade candles at a flea market and still collected disability for a back injury that healed years ago. That they could pass for brothers in bad lighting, but only one of them had ever held down a real job. My sister's face went through about 15 emotions in 2 seconds as her eyes darted between my husband and Craig, comparing them, finally seeing what she'd somehow, missed for years. Then the color drained out of her completely. She hadn't been sleeping with my husband at all. She'd been sneaking around with Craig this whole time and was too stupid to realize they were different people. All that scheming, and she couldn't even tell two cousins apart. Her big triumphant DNA test didn't prove what she thought it proved. It proved Craig was the father, and she just announced this to the entire family, including her own husband. "Wait, music," he said, his voice cracking. "You cheated on me." He pointed at Craig, who was squinting around like he'd just woken up from a nap. With him, Craig blinked a few times and mumbled, "Yo, what's happening right now?" My sister burst into panicked, music, tears. The kind where you realize you just detonated your entire life, and there's no taking it back. Her husband walked out without another word. My mom started screaming at me like I'd somehow orchestrated the whole thing.